So this has been obviously I chose a session which I was going to be the moderator for because this is obviously of high interest for me. And it's such a shame. I really wanted, unfortunately, Dr. Victoria Gordon is sick today. So unfortunately, I really wanted her to participate in this because I would love to have the angle from as far as a very much I suppose a biotech company like Leslie with Imugene, then the hardware aspect like with Dr. Erin. She takes, obviously with Victoria, it's more about the role of nature in how it can provide solutions from a medicine perspective. So I thought to have those three different perspectives would have been ideal. So as a starting point, I'd love, Leslie, can you give a bit of an introduction to yourself, give a bit of an introduction to Imugene, and then we'll go over to you, Dr. Erin.
Hello. Okay. My name is Leslie Chong, and I'm the CEO and MD of Imugene Limited. We are a biotech company specifically in cancer therapy. And so we have many items that's actually leading to, I'm happy to say, a cure in patients. And we currently have a few few people walking around in Sydney, in the US, elsewhere, without any cancer growth. So that's beautiful. And it's all about opening up your immune system rather than using something toxic like chemo and other things.
Sorry, I was just going to add one thing as well. I always love telling this story, and I know I mentioned it. I did actually get the numbers wrong. So basically, when Wholesale Investor first come across Imugene and Leslie, their market cap was sort of between that sort of 10 to 20 million mark. And it did go as high as $3.5 billion to give you an idea as far as how much this area has grown, the interest in it from both a fund manager perspective and investor perspective, but just in general, the potential, for what she's doing is something extraordinary. Sorry, over to you, Dr. Erin.
Thank you. My name is Dr. Erin Saricilar. I'm currently a vascular surgery advanced trainee working at Liverpool Hospital at present. Completed my two masters at Sydney University in surgery, vascular surgery specifically. I work very closely with diabetes and the end consequences of diabetes, something that whilst it keeps me in business, I'd be desperate to get rid of because it's terrible. So I've been working with Opuz as the Chief Medical Officer for over 6 months now. Very keen on the health tech space. Previously worked with a company called CancerAid. I was a software programmer in another age, still do it for fun. So I understand the role of software and data, big data, in health tech as well.
Brilliant. So to kick off with you, Leslie, like going back sort of over the last sort of 5 to 10 years, as someone, as a biotech, how have you seen the different, how do you describe the difference from your perspective as a CEO? What's required from you for, obviously, firstly, the drug discovery part? How has that process changed over the last sort of 5 to 10 years?
The process has changed significantly where pharmaceutical companies generally had research and development labs in-house. However, they're really looking for biotech companies like ours and others to innovate because big pharma is hard to move on small line of therapy. They don't really prove themselves until a couple of years in clinical development. And so you get a product that is making revenues and they tend to not innovate. You have to get the best PhDs, you have to get the best scientists, the bench scientists, etc. Whereas small biotech, by rule of competition, we have to be innovative. So we're constantly looking for the next medicine now. And so that's exactly what Imugene has done. We've always acquired medicine we think that could be the next medicine, the next cancer drug for the patients later, not now.
And how do you go about assessing that from your perspective? You're looking at different candidates. Are you the one discovering it, or you're acquiring companies for your next potential?
I speak to scientists all the time and physicians, and I've come from big pharma and big biotech companies, so I still remain fairly close to them. So looking at the landscape, people love to publish. This is a publish or die scenario in academics especially, so that's where I go for innovation. If there are papers out there that look remarkable and they're peer reviewed, I trust that, so I go and actually speak to the scientists. I actually go on site and do the bench work with them, and I look at the process. So I like to touch, feel, smell everything, and so I do a lot of the due diligence myself.
Brilliant. And for you, Dr. Erin, like, I suppose giving context, I'm going to go on the hardware side specifically. Wearable technology has become very, very popular over the last sort of 5 years. For you, what do you see I suppose, okay, you obviously joined Opuz for a reason. What was your motivation behind joining the company? Because obviously whatever Opuz is doing aligned with your thesis of what the vision for personalised healthcare, or at least technology solutions or wearable technology solutions. So explain that from your perspective as far as what was your thesis around it, and then why that alignment with Opuz.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So personalized healthcare is a big point, but I'll also add on to that a model of preventative healthcare. So we're starting to shift from a in-hospital tertiary level care to what we're starting to call, in the hospitals at least, hospital in the home, or an outreach primary care perspective. And in order to do that, we can't work with point-in-time views of the patient. What we need to do is look at continuous data, and we need large amounts of that in order to make decisions about trends in a person's health and actually manage them in a preventative model whilst applying it to the individual. So a big aspect of bringing in large amounts of data is that it can be very difficult to interpret. However, with added levels of technology, and we're talking AI here, machine learning, we can start making data fit the patient as opposed to the patient fit the data. Our current model of health has been trying to get very focused bits of data and generalize it to the entire population. So we could use one research paper to fit every person in the audience. We're now starting to shift to a model of care where we get large pools of data and see how this data fits to each one of you. So this, I think, is the future. And Opuz, I believe, truly encapsulates that. We get large amounts of data that's personalized, and we're able to process that very rapidly and do that all in the comfort of your own home without feeling invasive at all. I've been wearing this ring for the last 3 days. It's a model of how it's going to be, but I haven't even noticed it. So that's why I joined Opuz, and that's where I see the future.
And Erin, you have set up the perfect question that I want to ask Leslie, because we were literally talking about this outside. Like, I've had, 2 family members go through chemotherapy recently, have cancer and so forth. And, that answer the question I always have in my mind is, like, how is this not, like, how long's chemo been?
More than 35, 40 years.
And literally the answer, and I'm going to let you give the proper answer, like, why is chemo still the main treatment for cancer at this stage? And I think that sort of what Erin was saying leads on to that, but I'll let you answer that question.
Cancer development is a very difficult trajectory because if you've approved a medicine such as chemo, that becomes a standard of care. So chemo's been around, as I said, 35, 40 years, and it has a large bolus of safety data, and you have to match it. How does a new investigational product, a brand new drug, and it's going to work better than chemo, is going to get ahead when you have to match the safety profile of a drug that's been approved for 35 years, however rancid it is. So I think it makes it very difficult, but however, it makes companies like mine try to be really clever and strategic and how to employ money in the right way and the right indications in order for that to get approved, and then it could step forward into other lines of disease.
And so what's your thesis? So obviously what you're looking to do is help build people's immune systems that are actually going through chemo. Is that correct?
So as I said, chemo is a mainstay, and they get your T cells, your immune system gets quite tired after chemo. It's just a matter of fact.
And you watch people go through this transformation. I've seen it with my family members. You just watch, and I'm sure we've all seen it in different family members, how they sort of transforming going through, chemo. For you, Leslie, obviously the focus around sort of mRNA technology has been sort of quite popular because it's, for various reasons. How do you see, if you're thinking about Imugene 5 to 10 years from now, what are you looking at for solutions to solve, I suppose, the challenges that you want to face in the future?
So that's a really great question. And as I said, I'm looking for the next medicine, not what's, happening now. So right now, the biggest trend in cancer care is, we could all agree, is regenerating your cellular therapy so that your immune system sees the cancer, and especially in blood diseases. Now, these drugs are anywhere between $500 to $1 million. And so, because they're highly personalized, and I'm sure we'll get to this, what's the difference between personalized and medicine for the masses. Personalized medicine sounds really wonderful. In this case, it is highly personalized. They take the T cells out of the body. They then regenerate or supersize the T cells and they put it back. It's your own T cells after laborious chemo, steroids, and then maybe stem cell transplant. So you can imagine how tired your body is. And then they regenerate your T cells to do what it forgot to do, but it's still pretty tired. And so they put the T cells back in you. So these are called autologous chimeric antigen therapeutics. Great. They work probably anywhere between 50 to 93% of the time. They're on it for a bit, but then they progress. So you fell off that. So you need an external super size. You get donors from, say, Superman, and then you get the T cells back into the patient. So I think that's the next stage of medicine. Highly personalized has been quite a big focus, and it has worked, but the cost hasn't come down because it is so personalized. So we need the next generation of medicine to do better than what's already approved, and it needs to do better by way of technology and innovation.
And who's making that investment, I suppose, into the hardware and the software required for that to take place?
Well, so San Francisco happens to be a big biotech hub and a tech hub, and they, when I worked at Genentech, we worked quite closely with the Googles of the world to do the generation of data analysis so that we can see what are the common thread among these particular types of cancer types and see how we can apply that. So there are networks of folks, there's new generation of tech that's coming up that's blowing my mind. So I try to use AI, I try to use all the new tech industries with metadata analysis. So I think that is going to be the next sort of future in medicine, to take that leap.
And sorry to ask you one more question. I've got a question coming up for you. Do you see that speeding up obviously it's very well known how much money needs to be spent on biotechs going through their different sort of phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, etc. Do you see that help reducing the cost of your different processes of going to or at least discovery or going through trials in doing that? Do reducing the cost and also reducing the time?
I always say research. I'm a researcher by nature, and so research and data gathering and understanding exactly what you're doing and having a different point of view. I mean, I read probably every paper out there on bile duct cancer, whatever that I'm studying, because I need to know exactly what I'm trying to get through. So that amount of data collection is wonderful to triangulate on what exactly you're going to use that data point for. So it could be noisy data, but now with the application of data selection and data analysis and turning around not just the question, but the answer, and then going backwards, it's a pretty nice tool to be able to triangulate. And I do think that drug development will be faster because of this.
Fantastic. And for you, Erin, how do you see the synergy between sort of traditional medical approaches and also obviously the different range of health technologies becoming available?
Yeah, so in order to answer that, it's kind of important to recognize what is traditional healthcare. So in Western medicine, it usually comes down to large trials and large evidence bases in order to answer a simple single question. So these trials it initially began by, in vascular surgery, some madman would try something on a patient that said, okay, and it would maybe work 3 out of 4 times. But then someone would start creating a trial behind it. Now, with wearables, with new technologies, with the whole health tech space, we're starting to actually give the power of medical decision-making to the patient or the user themselves. So our community is becoming much more health literate, much more in touch with their own health. So if you ask my elderly grandparents or even my parents, they'll often say, I'll just do whatever the doctor tells me to do. That day's gone. Often patients come to me with more information about their disease than I know in the textbook. So I'm like, all right, just give me a moment and I'll read it. So patients are becoming much more in tune. And this lends itself to, again, the preventative model of care. These patients starting to understand their health. We're looking at the well but worried community, people that know all about these conditions and they're trying to prevent it. So all of this health tech, in my mind at least, will lend itself to personalised preventive healthcare in the community.
And just to add the other layer to that is that you mentioned about sort of data analytics before. So how do you see the integration of data analytics and then software solutions that then obviously lead to different hardware sort of combining in sort of either clinical trials or just helping improve those sort of patient outcomes?
Yeah, so clinical trials are very tough. The ones that I've run, designed, they take a lot of time. When you're designing a clinical trial, you have to design it with a very focused question. You want to get rid of as much of the redundancies as possible in order to make it efficient, make it answer the question that you've got ethics approval for. And that often means that you're trying to control for confounding variables. These are variables that may have an impact on the results, but you don't know, you don't want them to be there. And I think with our ability to create massive algorithms from big data, I think the day of the confounding variable is gone. I think, at least with clinical trials going forward, when larger analytic software solutions are coming into the mix, we're going to want these confounding variables. When we design clinical trials, they're very, very focused. They're basically laboratory studies where everything is controlled for age, ethnicity, electrolyte balance. All these are controlled to avoid confounders. Now, we're going to want as much data as possible, because in the past, you'd have some monkey like me trying to do the statistics. Now you've got a computer crunching these huge gigabytes of data. So it'll kind of lend itself to a more real-world clinical trial as opposed to a laboratory or in-hospital clinical trial. We'll be able to let people go about their business, eat whatever they want to eat, do whatever they want to do, so it reflects the real world. In the past, we wouldn't be able to interpret this. Now, I think we definitely can, and we want to capture those confounding variables.
So, Erin, you've talked about the preventative aspect, and Leslie, obviously your products or your solutions deal when people have already found out they've got cancer and they're going through chemo. For the both of you, and this is, I suppose, a selfish question for all of us, and I wouldn't mind, I'm actually going to ask questions from the audience sort of going forward. But what would be your first step for your own sort of personal healthcare as far as understanding the data about what's actually going on inside your body and understanding its deficiencies, or your own, I suppose, taking action on our own preventative measures?
Okay. All right, that's a tough question.
Light question.
So I'm personally quite averse to seeing doctors myself. I think if you think of it as a bell curve, like most things, there's a healthy spectrum of being interested in your health. You've got those that just don't care, and those that are honestly a bit too extreme in the amount they care. So the question is, should everyone just get a full body MRI once they hit the age of 35? No, that's not the way to go. And preventative healthcare exists, but diseases, I think, at least within our lifetimes, will not be eradicated. There will always be a place for definitive management, surgery, chemotherapy as well, radiotherapy, all of these things will always exist. What we can do is reduce the impact that it has on the community. I think as people are becoming more health literate, I think it's important in some way to educate them on how far they should go in their health literacy. Being too worried about your health can have detrimental effects as well, as you're trying to optimize everything. It's okay to be within a spectrum of certain health. You do a blood test on me, my potassium's going to be slightly lower than someone else in this room. That doesn't matter. It's within boundaries. So that's something that people need to recognize. You can't absolutely optimize everything. Disease is a part of our life. We simply need to figure out how to get on top of it with the minimal impact it has on the body, minimal impact and burden to the body, and to do it all as comfortably as possible away from the worst place in the world, which is a hospital.
How do you beat that, Leslie?
What do you do personally?
Personally, there's a lot I should do.
There seems to be, like, listening to all the different podcasts, and there seems to be a lot of different solutions for understanding what's going on inside your body at all. So, but I don't feel like you get that. We've got that access to that same sort of technology or resources in Australia. Look,
the current resources that we have involve a lot of stuff that are already on the market. So photoplethysmography is the main thing that's used for in devices everywhere, and it's been used since Fitbit in 2009. I think there's a lot of opportunities in bioimpedance, which is what Opuz uses. There's been recent evidence coming out on the ability to calculate cardiac output using bioimpedance, which is very essential to our health, and actually, personally, I think reflects on your cardiopulmonary function a little bit better than just a VO2 max. Additionally, there's a lot more coming out about how regularly your blood should be tested for electrolyte imbalances, general inflammatory markers, but it's also very difficult to interpret all of these. I think personally, I'm looking at improving my health, not by looking at the statistics, but by general well-being evidence that's out there on stress levels, sleep, fatigue, good diet, glucose being a very important aspect of that, and generally not overburdening myself from a physical and mental stress, which is very difficult in my line of work, but I try my best.
So you try doing that with any founder or CEO. So happy to open it up to the floor. Does anyone want to ask some questions to Leslie or to Erin? Go for it.
I basically agree with that, Erin. Basically, the major part that I see is each individual has. I'll speak a bit louder.
No.
There's a mic.
Oh,
Thank you.
He's going to bring it.
Health is wealth. I think the major problem is each and everybody of us do not place the major priority of our own ability and our own responsibility to take care of myself. The major problem is if each individual take care of ourselves, I'm talking about preventive healthcare market. As Erin was saying, you reduce your stress, have adequate sleep, have a good diet, exercise, reduce the inflammation. And the key thing is our diet. These days, if we follow all these principles, we will be much healthier in our society. But we don't. So currently we have lots of problems. So the major thing, as I say, is reduce stress, reduce inflammation, have a good lifestyle, put health as a priority. Health is wealth. Then our whole society will be much better. And the same thing with viruses, with COVID-19 and the new viruses that are coming up. If you are healthy and improve your health system, nothing can touch you.
I was actually just saying that for the first time today, I actually received 5 different emails from people saying, so sorry, I can't come because I've got COVID. I'm like, wow, really haven't heard COVID until the last sort of couple of weeks. It's like, why have you come back? It's so annoying seeing that word again.
COVID is coming back. The new strain is coming back.
Is there any question you have for Leslie and Erin? Oh, okay. Let's not go down a rabbit hole.
I might make a quick point on that. Thank you. That was wonderful. A lot of disease is actually inflammation driven. Nearly all of disease is really just inflammation. We talk about inflammation a lot, and I can take from my mum, the moment she hears inflammation, she has a meltdown. Inflammation is also essential. Our bodies are designed to use inflammation to be able to get over the stresses such as infections, such as simple cuts. I remember a vascular surgeon actually in Sydney once told me, the person who unlocks the ability to control inflammation will be the most powerful person in the world.
Leslie's on it. Next capital raise.
I want to say thank you, young lady. And I think we take our health for granted
Until we don't.
until we're sick. My dad used to say, I have the man flu, and I didn't know what that was when I was a child, but I know now, because he was never sick. And then when he got sick, it was death, and that's when he started taking care of himself. But I see that with a lot of doctors as well. There's a lot of doctors, I deal with lots of patients, I deal with lots of oncologists. They're consistently not taking heed, and you think, wow, you're going to eat that fifth donut. And it's interesting to me. And they're an oncologist, treated many patients, and I think, have you not taken the heat from all your patient care? But I think it's a matter of, there's a balance that you need to have. There's also mental health that could be quite important. Maybe you need that fifth donut. I dare say, I don't, you've had a pretty stressful day. You've dealt with lots of deaths, during the weeks amount of time, so maybe you need that and that's your stress relief. But I do think that mental health, physical health, using the knowledge, it's not always easy to data collect and then actually utilize it in your own personal life. I try to adapt it into my clinical trials because that's a learned aspect. I want to be smart about it. But in my personal life, I think as a health professional, I find it really hard to gravitate towards habits that they're lifelong, and there's some of it I need it for my mental health. And I'm talking about me that ate that fifth donut. So
yeah, I can definitely vouch for that. After a pretty disastrous 6-hour case, I had 3.5 Krispy Kreme donuts. And I only stopped because it ran out.
What a topic on the future of medicine and health. So effectively, to summarize, the future of healthcare and medicine is diet and lifestyle, and a donut every now and again.
Sometimes you do earn that donut. I think you can go truly extreme and be absolutely maximizing what you eat, but sometimes you just deserve a donut, I think.
So to just summarize the last sort of question, I always love that. I know Leslie sort of touched on this, and I'd love to you can sort of repeat it again, but what is the next let's say from an investor's perspective, the next 5 to 10 years, what is the big investment opportunity in the future of medicine, the future of healthcare? What is that sort of, the alpha opportunity, the one which investors can sort of 5, 10x, etc. in the next 5 to 10 years?
I like to say booth 9 Opuz, but
Humbly speaking.
In reality, I think it's two things. The first is somehow being able to monitor disease or persons remotely, I think is essential. I personally love to be able to get people home using a hospital in the home service where I continue to monitor my patients as they continue on their disease journey. So wearables is actually a big thing. As was mentioned earlier, hardware is the new software. I think that's definitely important, but also personalized medicine is very important. The delivery of medicine to treat the person, as opposed to having one tool that works for absolutely everybody. We've been slowly trying to shift, at least in the medical field, to personalized doses. At least for blood thinners, for instance, we personalize our doses by the patient, but it has to get to an absolute extreme, I think, of really doing
that with medicine. That's basically a trial and error episode I suppose until there's I'll give you my own case, right? So my boy has got a heart issue, and effectively they're giving fliconide so that he doesn't have arrhythmia. And the amount of testing we did on all the different doses of fliconide until finally his heart function was where it should be was, it was literally a 10-month exercise.
That's a big challenge. Unfortunately, that's the old generation of medications. So I can talk from a vascular disease blood thinning perspective. We'd have to very carefully dose our warfarin or Coumadin doses for the patients, and you constantly be adjusting it. These days with direct oral anticoagulation, such as Apixaban and Rivaroxaban, it's one dose fits all. It just is able to work. So it used to be called novel oral anticoagulants. Now it's just called direct because it's no longer novel. So it's the old generation of medications that are requiring in like very, very careful dosing and monitoring. What the future is, I think, is adjusted dosing, but no need for monitoring. So heavier persons may need higher doses. Children may need lower doses, but you won't need to monitor it in the same way flecainide or warfarin or digoxin needs.
Just to give you a perspective, warfarin and Coumadin are used to be used as rat poisoning, and so it was known to really thin the blood, and lots of ex-chemo patients have to take this because it coagulates the blood so much, and they have to take to clean the lines.
And for you, Leslie, apart from going onto the ASX and buying IMU, what do you see as the 5 to 10x opportunity for investors?
I look at next medicine. I look at what is the height of medicine now? What are people taking? Because, you know, our past science haven't proven that well, and I'm looking for certain cures for certain kinds of cancers. That's the path that we're on. And I really believe in my lifetime, there will be certain cures for certain kinds of cancer, not all cancer, because cancer is a million different diseases. So you look at what is being wildly taken up by patients now, because what's their next line? You want to elongate their life, and hopefully the next line of therapy actually will lead to a cure, and not just a scotch above, 2 months of survival. So that's what I look at when I look at my personal investment and the medicine that I want to bring into my company, as well as investing in other biotech company. I look for the next medicine.
And how would you, like, when you, and just from a layman speaking, how would you identify that next medicine if you're the average person?
Well, so you could actually go online and say, what is the medicine, what's the therapeutic area for, say, lung cancer? So, for instance, in your family. So you say, what is the high degree of care? It's probably an EGFR inhibitor, because that's about 30% of lung cancers. And then you know what's being approved in the next few years, or what's currently approved. You look at the next one. The next generation is going to be wholly better, because they have to be.
I think if I could quickly mention as well, I think if you're looking at certain diseases, the future can be summarized into two things. One is lifestyle diseases, and the second is diseases of aging. So, for instance, in lifestyle, diabetes and heart disease is one of the two of the biggest fields where ongoing research needs to be done in order to manage it. And secondly, in aging, we're talking about cancers. So these two fields, I think, are the real future of where healthcare and medicine is going to go.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our time. Lunch awaits you. Thank you so much for the I'd like to say thank you very much for the panelists. I love that we ended up talking more on I thought it was just going to be all hardware in our discussion. We went down many different roads, but thank you very much for the participation, and I hope you got benefit from that session. Thank you.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you, everyone.